All right, everybody. Welcome this 14th of March 2020. Uh, as usual, it's me, Ndolo, and my co-host Diana. And our guest today is Engineer Howard Ashiundu. I always get it very hard to pronounce the last name, so maybe today he will give us the pronunciation. Otherwise, I hope we will start and he will give us a brief introduction of himself for the next 10 minutes. And after that, we will question him a bit. We will have like 30-35 minutes. Then we give him some time to take a breather. So I will hand over to my co-host, Diana, to introduce him properly. Diana?
Okay, thank you, Engineer Ndolo. So welcome, Engineer Howard, to the hot seat, as Cedric called it, but it's our webinar. We are glad to have you and thank you for making time for it.
Thank you.
As we all know, you are vying for the president of the IEK and you are an engineer at Kenha. So at this point, I would invite you to introduce yourself. Tell us about your engineering background, what you're vying for, that is the presidency, and how it looks like to be a president of the IEK. Mention your manifesto, what we expect from you. Also, before your manifesto, you can tell us what have you done with IEK before? Like, what has been your contribution to IEK? Have you been in any committees or an active member? So we would want to hear all that. Meanwhile, all members will be expected to switch off their microphones, or rather to mute their mics and their videos. So you'll be the one on the spot. We won't be responding to you until you tell us, well, it's question time. We listen, and keep questions to ourselves. So all members, please keep your questions aside. You are encouraged to ask questions via the microphone as opposed to on the chat. But if you're on a noisy place, please feel free to do it on chat. Karibu, Engineer Howard.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Ndolo, for working so hard to make this to happen. My name is Engineer Howard. As I have been introduced, I am a civil engineer. The list that Diana gave me is very long. I'll try to remember as I go by, but I'm a civil engineer by training. I studied civil engineering at Jomo Kenyatta University, graduated, worked for 1 year as a humanitarian engineer, and worked for another 6 years in an engineering consultancy setup, where I worked largely in the area of materials engineering, foundations, and geotechnical, which is a cross-cutting area. And then after that, I've also worked another close to 7 years for a state corporation, National Highways Authority. Over and beyond the bachelor's degree that I studied at the university, I've also done a Master of Science in Construction Engineering and Management, which basically gives somebody broad project management knowledge. Broad project management knowledge, which is focused in construction engineering. When I say construction engineering, I mean construction of projects like roads, tunnels, dams, and including project financing, scheduling, and that kind of stuff. I also studied a Master of Law in Construction Law, Arbitration, and Adjudication in a university in the UK. This introduced me to matters of law, not necessarily the total cycle of laws, including criminal laws, but the laws that we studied at that level were focused on construction law, contracts, and dispute resolution. I wish to mention that I am a member of professional bodies, and just to try and list them, I am a registered practicing engineer licensed with the Engineers Board of Kenya. I'm a corporate member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, the the last more than 10 years. I am a member of the American Society for Quality and a member of the PMI Institute US. I'm an associate of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and a certified project management professional by PMI US. I have worked for a long period of time in the area. My two key areas of specialization is first geotechnical and foundations. I like subsurface engineering, things that are below the ground. But I've also practiced practiced in contracts and dispute resolution, both as a lay jury and lay counsel, solving contractual disputes. I've also been a trainer in the area of dispute resolution for a long time now, and I have coached, trained, and mentored many people. Actually, I think they cannot go below 1,000 people. At the Project Management Institute US, I've also been a member of the PMI Thought Leadership Inner Circle. Basically, what this group does is a global team of members whose job is to assist in leading trends at Project Management Institute at a global level. If those who are doing PMP right now, they should be understanding that in the last couple of months, we have now moved from the edition of the PMBOK, that's the Project Management Body of Knowledge, which was proposing conventional project management methods focused on processes. But now we have moved to the new edition of the PMBOK, focusing on outputs of project management rather than processes. Basically, what it introduces in project management, it introduces an aspect of agile project management. This means ability to adaptability to changing project environment or changing project conditions. And these are things that we've been part of at a global level. Coming back home at the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, my relationship with the IEK is very interesting. I have been a very active member of IEK. That's the best way to describe myself. And maybe to look for several aspects of defining what active means is that from the time I graduated, I've literally attended almost 80 to 95% of IEK functions. From the time when I was a graduate engineer, I'm one of those members at IEK who pay their subscriptions like 2 years in advance. I believe in IEK. I believe in engineers working together. I believe in the dream of engineering in Kenya. I believe in engineering as an industry. I believe in holding together and building the engineering profession and making it to be the best profession. I have basically experienced all troubles that any engineer in a typical context in Kenya has could imagine to go through. I identify with the challenges that many people have been speaking about in engineering. I have been available when reforms at IEK have been taking place. Some of those AGMs I have always been mobilizing from the sidelines. Of course, I was not the one carrying the mantle and doing them, but I've been doing from the sidelines. My first attempt to work in an IEK committee was the Committee for Quality that was supposed to be promoting quality. That time I had worked as a quality assurance engineer with a state corporation, handling issues of technical compliance. And my CV was very good. The chairman of that committee told me, engineer, your CV is very good, but unfortunately you are a graduate member, so you cannot be a member of a committee. It was very disappointing. But all the same, I remained on the sidelines and doing what I do best. Next time, the council that is ending right now, I was appointed to the ADR committee, and in the ADR committee, the chairman called one meeting. The meeting that he called, by that time, I had not received my appointment letter, so I didn't attend that meeting. Unfortunately, no other meeting was called for the rest of the season up to now that we are going to elections. All the same, we've had a couple of contributions as a team, especially on the ADR policy, which we were able to connect in a manner close to what we are doing right now and make contributions to it. I personally was able to pass my contributions to the team that was handling the matter in Nairobi. Coming to my presidency, I decided to vie for presidency for a couple of reasons. I identify with engineers and the challenges engineers face in Kenya. I know where we've come from. I experienced the troubles of governance in IEK when I was still a graduate engineer. Those days when if you wanted to attend an AGM for engineers, you could be turned away at the earliest time possible. It's interesting today, graduate engineers actually attend AGMs. The only thing they can't do is to vote. So I was there during those days. I could come to IEK conferences. AGMs used to happen one of the days during the conferences, and then you are told you are still an intern, you need to go. One of the days I actually challenged one of the senior engineers who was a registrar then and asked him, what is an intern? Because there is a clear definition of interns, and normally internship is defined by a time frame. But I was asking him, how can you define people who have been interns in perpetuity? We moved from that season, the old constitution, where an AGM was, I don't know how to describe it, but leadership was hereditary. You come in, you move up, somebody else takes your position, you move up again, someone else takes your position, like that. Some people sat down and they said they have to put an end to this. They started a journey of constitutional review. And I remember part of the information I've been sharing, I mentioned their names, one of them being my competitor currently, Engineer Matalanga. He has done a great job. He initiated, is part of those people who initiated constitutional review process. And he worked together with others, again, Engineer Henry Nduga, one of those people who risked at a time when if you tried to propose anything, you could easily be blacklisted at IEK. He was able to move a motion and set the constitutional review process into place. When that constitution came to the floor of the AGM, to the AGM came to the floor of the House for it to be discussed, I was personally there. I remember the bench where I was seated, the person seated next to me was Engineer Kariuki Mushemi. He was carrying a constitution, the Constitution of Kenya. And he kept on passionately telling the plenary that, if anybody, including Mama Mboga, can vote the president of Kenya, why do we insist on people sitting in a boardroom and choosing the president of IEK? So what happened in that constitutional review, the focus was put on the clauses that govern how to choose the leadership. Section 9 was changed. And what Section 9 did, which is very fundamental, it opened up IEK from hereditary leadership to open candidature and to universal suffrage. In other words, for you to qualify to be president of IEK, you only need to be a corporate member, which I am today. And secondly, you need to be chosen through universal suffrage. It's not a question of people sitting in a boardroom and deciding, that negotiated democracy. I put my candidature forward, and my goal to vie for presidency was not premised on the fact that Matalanga is a bad person or Jane is a bad person. It was based on the fact that we must have a third option. We know where the institution is currently. We know we have gone through constitutional changes. We know we have gone through several transitions, constitutional transition. We've gone through strategic transition from a time when we were rudderless. We had no strategic plan. People are just living, just sit in the office register members and wait for your time to go and another team comes in. The teams led by Engineer Sharma has worked and delivered the new constitution for IEK, not the new constitution, but the strategic plan. The other team led by Engineer Matalanga, which was working on the new constitution, has not delivered the constitution. I understand that there had been challenges, and those challenges are the type of challenges that we need now to overcome and get that constitution delivered in the shortest time that the next council comes in. But I just wish to mention that we must understand the transitions we're coming through. We were a very closed-up society. This society has now opened up. We are able to tap into new energy, new ideas, new horizons. I decided to put my candidature to this seat to help the institution to move in the next dispensation. I'll mention exactly what it is. There's a good reason why I have been promoting visibility. I've been promoting growth. I've been promoting cohesion. And I've been promoting compliance. Because I think these are the critical things that are required at this point in time in the institution. Just to mention, for example, starting with visibility, we have had from many, many years ago, people telling us how engineers are supposed to take their place. Engineers are supposed to come out and occupy the positions that they're supposed to occupy. However, after we have all this talk, each one of us goes and disappears and gets silent and gets off radar. Because engineers have had a tradition. This tradition has been passed from one generation to another over a long period of time. It has happened like that for so long that those who have grown up or those who have been brought up in that system, I don't see how they could be capable to navigate IEK into the new, transitioning IEK into the visible IEK, maintaining cohesion as it is required, and observing compliance. I'll tell you why. And we must take advantage of the new constitution. Governments in Kenya, and I think in Africa, are structured in a manner that the establishment is always desirous of insisting of a method of coming to leadership by, come in quietly, through the ranks. I do not ascribe to that method of doing things. There's a reason why I refused to go and start from a lower position. It's because when I come and I wish to come with fresh ideas, I want to come with the ideas as they are. I want the ideas unadulterated. I want to come and just put my proposals on the table, having a very open mind, having a sincere mind, on a clean slate, and be able to work with other people who will come on board without the baggage of saying that, this is how we used to do things, this is how we used to do things. The new constitution gave us a very clear way of how to ensure continuity. It's by establishing a functional secretariat, by having a strategic plan. I have no cause coming here today and start telling people when I'm looking for votes, start promising things that are outrageous, which cannot fit in a strategic plan. Because I'm aware that we have a strategic plan, which we have proposed, we have contributed to, we have adopted. I have an obligation to lead the institution within that strategic plan. And so, because of this, my mind is clear that if I'm coming to IEK, I'm coming to allow the institution to embrace freshness, to embrace new minds, to live out of the baggage of, this is how things used to do. As I said, governments this side of Africa, they have a habit of, however good you are, they will tell you, come in and start from below. They will take their time and convert you and make you to be like them before they can let you to lead. Once you do that, there's a lot of good things about you, good attributes about you that you might get to lose along the road. And that is exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I would like to come with these minds and just build synergy with other excellent people that I'm going to meet in that council. If you look at my agenda, it's a very inclusive agenda. Actually, this agenda, anybody will be elected. Anybody will be able to fit in the agenda of the president. I'm confident that I will be becoming the next president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, so that I'm able to navigate the institution to the next level, but hold everybody together and be able to work the tightrope of compliance. Basically, the idea of compliance is to ensure that we work on a pure system of meritocracy, a system that creates a fair playing ground for everybody, a system that has predictability, a system that once we set the wall and we set the height, however high it is, if we say our quality want to be jumping 100 meters high, once we set that height, it should be predictable. Everybody should know that I need to work on generating sufficient strength to jump 100 meters. Something that predictable and something fair to everybody. It's supposed to help us build an institution and a society that has got synergy and that can take us forward. It will give us a huge, huge leap in another 2 years. I wish to end at that point. And I don't know, I hope I've not forgotten any other thing that I need to speak about myself. Perhaps it can come out during the questions.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Engineer Howard, for that introduction. So the floor is open to anyone with any questions. It's time to ask any question that you have. So when you're asking a question, unmute your mic and ask the question or give a comment.
All right, Engineer, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And now, just as other people are coming in, before I give Cedric, I would ask one question I think many people want to hear from you. Why did you take IEK to court, and why did you why haven't we have an internal dispute resolved internally instead of going to the courts? And so far, people are asking why haven't you, because you're seeking the presidential post, why haven't you withdrew the case from the courts? You can answer that. Maybe Cedric can ask a question. You answer it together.
Thank you so much, Ndolo. I would like to ask Howard, in his own assessment, being a member of a committee that drastically failed to deliver on the mandate they were given, what is his opinion on the status or how the committees are structured and how they function in the institution, and how can they be made to function better and be more accountable? That's all for me.
Perhaps I could start with Ndolo's question about the court case, because this question has come up several times. And I remember in the last couple of days, it raised so much controversy. But I had already given my side of the story, how the whole thing came about, because the way the dispute came about, it was purely a political decision, a decision made by the then council to bar me from vying. I made attempts to get the matter addressed at the earliest time possible. I reached out to the council, I called, I texted, I emailed, I wrote official letters. I made an attempt to physically walk to the chairman to have the matter sorted, but the matter did not get sorted. So, but because it was involving documents that are directly offensive to me, I decided to get redress from the court. That's how the matter got itself in court. As I had mentioned, we rallied behind another lineup of contestants, and they won. And these have been friends. They were friends then. They have been friends even when they were in the council, and we worked together very well, and there has been a lot of goodwill. But then decisions have been made, but those decisions have not been executed within the time that they needed to be executed. And that is what led us to be where we are at this time, where the case has remained in court. The events of the last 3 or 4 days have been very, very, very dramatic. But the culmination of it is that we've away from the public limelight, we've had a series of meetings, very, very high level meetings with interested parties. I've had a meeting with the Honorary Secretary and my competitor, Engineer Matalanga. I've had a meeting with the President of IEK. I've had a meeting with the Chairman of IBK to discuss on how to get the matter sorted. And I would wish to just say that the matter is in safe hands, and it will, we have navigated beyond where we were 4 days ago. And to comment or to respond to the question that Cedric asked about the committee, I think the biggest challenge that IEK has been having, and this is exactly the reason why we need new thinking in IEK. Committees of IEK have been formed through use and reuse of council members. And the challenge of use and reuse is that council members become tied down and bogged down by 3, 4, or 5 committees. You know, it feels almost as though there are not enough members in the institution who can handle responsibilities in the committees. And because council members get tied down in more than one committee, it becomes difficult for them to dedicate their time in convening and attending to meetings in the committee. And a council finds itself in a situation like what happened in this council, where multiple members abandon the critical role that their committees are supposed to play. They congregate into one committee that the council feels it has high priority. In this case, council members who are in multiple committees focused on strategic plan. They were able to deliver the strategic plan, but several other committees suffered the consequences of paying excessive attention to strategic plan. Of course, the reason why we have committees and why IEK transacts through committees is to ease the burden from the council and to enable much more work to be done. One of the things that must be done now, going forward, especially by the next council, is to ensure that more members are allowed to participate on committees, and committees are given, we reduce the burden of reuse of same members in different committees, so that the committees are able to convene, they're able to transact business, they're able to inform council, they're able to add value to the growth of the institution.
Yes, Kitui.
Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this meeting. And this is a comment from some of the things that have been highlighted on Howard's manifesto. I didn't see any focus on engineers who work for NGOs. I work for NGOs in the field of UN, UNICEF, and other NGOs. So this is a comment. So if you get to be appointed president, please bring on board also opportunities for engineers from the development world to be able to also participate in IEK activities, because we actually do feel sidelined. And it's like most activities that IEK has been hosting are just centered for engineers who are based in Nairobi or who work for government parastatals or for companies that are based in the big cities, when a large number of engineers do actually work in the development world. That's just my comment. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. I don't want to let it to drop down. You'll realize that what I set out as my agenda is they are broad areas, and they are very deliberate, so that they should be able to, to have a piece of cake for everybody, including engineers in humanitarian activities like yourself. I said the first 1 year that I worked from campus, I worked as a humanitarian engineer doing WASH programs. So I really understand what you are talking about. But recently, when the Honorary Secretary released official data of membership, IEK, I came out strongly to try and query that data And my query, if you remember what I queried, is that, and I was querying it under my agenda on growth and the agenda on cohesion. Cohesion, just ensuring that we do not leave anybody behind. You cannot give data and say that we have 3,009 corporate members and we have 4,000 graduate engineers. Yet you know very well, EBK has registered 11,000 graduate engineers. So where are the extra 6,000 or 7,000 graduate engineers? But after you've looked at the 11,000 at EBK, you must also ask yourself, universities have graduated almost 28,000 engineers. So 28,000 minus 11,000, again, you must ask yourself, where are the 17,000 engineers? Some of them have gone into, somebody said, hawking. Others are hawking insurance policies. Others are opening bank accounts. Others are have gone into humanitarian engineering like you are. Personally, I've been there, and in part of the job I've done in dispute resolution, I've actually represented some parties doing projects and contracts under United Nations, and I know their contracts are deliberately structured in a manner that is different from what we conventionally do, and all these things introduce very interesting dynamics to engineering practice and experiences that we have. But I also know other guys, like I have a roommate of mine in campus who he did mechanical engineering. He left, he went into airline industry, working an aircraft structures engineer. As we speak, he works out of the country. He was poached by the Arabs to go and work for those large airliners. He's a very, very high profile person. But if you came back to our data as a membership society, we have no, we do not, even if that person say is not a corporate member or a graduate member, it is in the benefit and the interest of engineers to know or to account for that person. Because if we wanted to know how we can leverage their skills, their skill set, their opportunities, we can only do that if we have data and information about these people. So IEK, I know, is interested in maintaining a membership register, and it has categories, fellows, corporate members, graduate members, and technicians and technologists, and it ends there. But there is no other person in this industry who should be able to be concerned about all university graduates. There are even others who are unregisterable, categorized as unregisterable engineers. They need somebody to speak for them. If IK might not be having a category for them, but there is no other welfare body in Kenya apart from IK, which should be concerned to know who are these people, where are they, how many are they, and what is it that needs to be done to make a difference in their lives. This is the kind of new thinking that I wanted to take this chance presented by Section 9 of the Constitution to bring it on the table and bring it into IK, working with the council that will be elected by the members of IK. So the engineers in the humanitarian field, we hear you, we know that you exist, and under our agenda, we know that we have an obligation to bring you on board and to work along with you. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you for that, engineer. Matthews, I can see you online. Do you have a question? You've been very vibrant in the other side. Matthews? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in a noisy place. Maybe if I settle, I'll ask the question. Let's still going on. Yeah.
Okay. Any other question is welcome on board. I can see Abdi Fatah, you're online. Do you have a question? Can see Engineer Shama.
How can Abdi Fatah not have a question?
Okay, before
Lawrence,
you prepare.
Lawrence is on.
Lawrence, yeah.
I would say be centered around the major towns within the country. Say,
Lawrence, start afresh. Your mic was off.
Okay. My question is basically, how is Engineer Howard if he takes this seat? And I'm hoping he takes it. That how is he going to ensure that IEK completely moves away from Nairobi? Because we used to work into we used to be in a system where, sorry, someone else's mic is on. Just taking IEK out of Nairobi basically and taking it to Mashinani and empowering that Mashinani branches to be more funded, to be more active, and because those Mashinani branches are the ones which are closer to the members. Before, all the engineers were congregated in Nairobi and IEK in Nairobi would work. But at the moment, with devolution, engineers are spread out all over the country. So how are you going to ensure that those IEK branches are well funded and as active as they can be? Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Members of IEK need to know that what they need right now is a president who has a liberal mind. Because where we are going is a place where there are several needs of members from all directions. We cannot afford to carry with ourselves rigidity at this time. We cannot afford to continue living in the year 2000 and 2012. But coming to your question, we have a new constitution that is coming in place. Even the current constitution gives powers to the council to create new branches. But of course, the new constitution is perhaps going to be more explicit how branches are supposed to come about and how power is going to be devolved. Sometimes I usually suspect that maybe this constitution never went through because people feared devolution of power. And that's the challenge when you insist on being stuck with persons who have learned how things are done. Because once they've learned how things are done, they will still have problems with any dynamism introduced in a document like the Constitution. This is a time when IEK needs a presidency like mine critically. But the thoughts that have been put on the table have been to devolve IEK based on regions, the other thoughts that have been put on the desk is to devolve IEK based on disciplines. Of course, we are still very few members. Right now, we are still playing about 3,000. On my agenda for growth, and yesterday during the infrastructure scorecard meeting, during the closure, the chairman of IBK, Engineer Mongera, made very interesting statements. I don't know whether it was by coincidence or whether he has been reading my materials to get ideas, but he mentioned that IEK would like to do a recruitment drive that will keep the board busy for a whole year to try and transition graduate engineers who are registrable, those who have 3 years experience and above. This is supposed to grow our numbers. You know, when you have a small number like 3,000 and you're over-devolving, again, it complicates issues. But as we grow in numbers, we grow in strength, we grow in presence, we grow in our effectiveness. We must ensure that that growth supports quality growth. We have standards, we meet those standards, we push up our numbers. Once we've done that, devolution becomes easy. Anybody who is, say, in Mandera and Garissa and Wajir, they should be able to have a chapter where they're able to reach and receive services. But again, still on the same lines of dynamism. I want perhaps to, when I wanted to advise somebody asked me a question, Howard, have you ever led an institution, a professional institution? I found that to be a fairly ridiculous question, because the first time I ever led an institution of this nature, not exactly like this one, is when I was in campus. When we were, I was an honorary secretary for Society of Engineering students in Jomo Kenyatta University. That time, our minds were free, our minds were liberal, our minds were open. Questions like financing of branches, we should be able to come up with dynamic ways of getting branches funded. Of course, we are collecting membership subscriptions in Nairobi. As you said, perhaps we appear to be having too much presence in Nairobi, but you also need to remember that even Nairobi region also needs a chapter or a branch. But we need to become dynamic. We need to work with with corporates. We need to provide value. We should be able to shove up our income, our resources, not just focusing only on membership subscriptions. When we were students, we were able to host our students' dinner at Windsor Golf and Country Club when it was unimaginable. During that time, when it was unimaginable for a person to just go and have lunch at Windsor Golf and Country Club. We were able to do that because at that level, as little as we were, we could sit down, strategize, figure out how we can partner with other people, other players in the industry, and just pull it off. So even as little as we were, as young as we were, we had already appreciated the dynamics of how to take advantage of the resource that we have. Remember, we are engineers. We are the people who handle the budget of $1 trillion per year. We are only 20,000, but we still have other people amongst us who are jobless. If we are able to connect the resource called engineering to the opportunities available in the industry, translating it into actual revenue for engineers, the issues of financing, whether it's branches, whether it's national team, whether it's any other activities of IEK, should never become a matter to be put on the table to discuss. It should be easy. It should be, I usually see the Law Society of Kenya, an individual advocate can choose to say, I will be sponsoring as a platinum sponsor of the annual event. This is the kind of a thing I would like to see in engineering. Before we even begin of running around looking for large corporates like Safaricom, we should be having persons among us who are resourced well enough to be able to just say, we need this thing to be done. We have these graduates to be trained. We have this budget. We can do ABCD and get to close this deal. We need to be thinking in that direction because we cannot be handling 1.5 trillion shillings every year. And we are still complaining. We are in a perpetual mode of complaining with troubles all over the place. Yet we have an institution that is supposed to be working for engineers.
All right, engineer, thank you for that. Now, let me take you back a bit before we go far. I will take you back to the court, the question, the issue at the courts.
Yes.
The issue in the courts, with all due respect and all laws taken into consideration, we cannot talk much more about it openly. But I would like to ask you one question that many members are asking. Say, for example, you are elected and you become the president. How will you cope with the idea that you are in courts and you are the president? One. Two, in the same sense, if you win the election, how will you deal with the future internal disputes that might arise? The third one is, if you are not elected by any chance, will you still be able to help in any function in IEK in order to have a working and functioning dispute resolution committee and with structures? And then Abdi, you can ask a question.
Ndolo hizo ni maswali mingi. I should answer those ones before Abdi asks. Can I proceed?
Yes, proceed, engineer, proceed.
First, on the court case, the matter of the court case, as I said, we've had very high level meetings so that we can get closure on those court cases. In principle, we have to maintain goodwill that we will get those court cases solved outside the court, not inside the court. But as we understand, a court is not a place that you just walk in and put the case there and then feel like you want to remove it and walk back there and remove the case. So there are procedures that we have to go through so that we finally get the case withdrawn from the court. Secondly, the issue of conflict of interest, if elected when a case is in court, I need to make this statement clear, very short and clear. The rules that govern conflict of interest are straightforward and easy. One, they require you to declare the interest, which I've already done. I've declared the interest. So I fulfill the requirement of those rules. Number two, they require that if there is any deliberations concerning that matter, and you are in that position, say I am president and the matter of the court case comes up, the rules of conflict of interest requires me to recuse myself from that sitting. Of course, we know that the institution has got 1,001 other businesses to transact. People do not go to IEK to transact only on a court case. So that shouldn't be an issue. We know, and we have 1,000 ways of how to deal with it. That shouldn't be a big deal. Finally, the issue of future disputes and dispute resolution mechanism. I need to make this clear that I'm a dispute resolution professional, and not just that, I'm a practitioner of dispute resolution, and which I've practiced both as lay counsel and lay jury, and I'm a trainer of dispute resolutions. I understand quite a bit of that side of issues, and I think that we need, not that I think, I've always kept on pushing this proposal forward. In our last committee, if you look at our WhatsApp group, it's a matter that I had even brought it up to our chairman and asking him, why can't we sit down and prepare a framework for alternative dispute resolution within IEK? We were never able to convene the meeting. We were never able to make progress on that. But I think it is something that should be executable and be done even in as short as 3 months. Because you can imagine this election, as we speak right now, we had a 2 hours meeting between contestants and the scrutineers committee, ahead of these elections. We've had only one meeting. But in that approximately 2 hours meeting, we were able to put forward a proposal for a dispute resolution mechanism in this election. Actually, we do not expect in this election to have disputes going to court, because we've already come up with a rough framework of how to deal with any matters that spill out of the hands, just so that we do not experience what we experienced. So yes, I am in a position to assist and navigate the institution to ensure that we have established alternative dispute resolution mechanisms put in place in the shortest time possible and going forward, so that members are able to sort issues with fellow members at whatever level, and ensure that we avoid unnecessary costs that come with both costs and the reputational damage that comes with court processes. Thank you. Abdi, you can now go ahead.
Thank you, engineer. Mine is not a question. First of all, I want to say that I wish you all the best in this election. And the second thing is...
Abdi, speak close to the mic.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, mine is just making a remark that engineer, our constitution allows us to have members from technologists and technicians. And if we can bring this kind of people on board, engineer, we can have a lot of resources in terms of membership fee. And I would want to ask you, can you promise us that you can at least push for 40% or 50% of membership fee, so that it can remain at the branch level, so that we can give services at machinani level? That was the question I wanted to push, and that is what I wanted to see from your end. If we can get these people, there are many people who are technicians and technologists, there are many people who are graduate engineers. If the branches are given opportunity to deal with the issue of membership, I think we can mobilize so many people, and we can get a good amount of people in this institution. If only you can assure us that we can retain some percentage of their money, so that we can now continue to give services at the branch level. Engineer, are you going to support that once you get that position as a president of this institution?
Thank you, Abdi. As I said, I believe in dynamism. I believe in very liberal thinking. I believe in ideas being put on the table. I don't believe in the issue of, in the method of solving problems by going behind the wall, hatching plans, and then coming to the boardroom to surprise people with the plans and shoving it down their throats. I believe in opening. If we come to a boardroom and we've come to discuss, let ideas flow. Let people churn through the ideas. Let them be refined. Let them be adopted. And then we can have progress on that without looking like, you only have one way of thinking, stuck in this way. So issues like percentage financing for machinani, issues like bringing technicians and technologists on board, because if they're already inside our constitution, it should not be a question of whether or not. It should be a question of us living up to our constitution. Personally, I've been one of those people who have always been speaking and pushing about constitutionalism. If we have a constitution, we must also learn to respect that constitution. If we have captured levels of membership in the constitution, we must look for those members and know where are our members, what can we do about them. But again, in the spirit of liberal thinking, dynamism, several thoughts have come to my mind, which I would still want to see engineers discussing them, including the possibility of going towards self-regulation. See the way we have EBK regulating and IEK membership and what have you. If we can go through a process of legislation, and that process of legislation will bring EBK together with IEK. After all, if they've been together, fuse them together in the spirit of self-regulation, come up with a new piece of legislation to ensure that works, elect our leadership, ensure that, for example, we do not have a regulator of engineers who is housed at Ministry of Transport, yet we have engineers in the Ministry of Water who have their own ministry, but they have to look for services of the regulation inside another ministry. Other engineers are in power and what have you. If we have one body that is self-regulating in the true spirit of progression and moving forward, again, these are things that my mind is very open to them. And it's about what members want. If members would like to continue with the structure that we have a regulator separate from a members club, I would be very glad to implement that. If members would like us to have the two coalesce together and become a self-regulatory body, where we can now pull in KETRAB and plus the Institution of Technicians and Technologists and come up with a very clear framework with very proper legislation, categorize memberships, define the hierarchies, define our relationship, and have a body that is not domiciled in anywhere per se. It's there to serve it, because engineering service is a cross-cutting service. You had somebody from the UN saying that they are forgotten. Perhaps it's because sometimes when we sit and we know that EBK is housed in transport, we think that every engineer must be in transport. So yes, I would be very open to ideas, including any idea of revenue sharing, as long as it goes toward promoting engineering and toward promoting cohesion, compliance, and visibility, as well as growth for engineers.
Engineer, how will you improve visibility?
Okay, this is one of the areas that I must say, out of the 4 candidates, I don't think there is any candidate who we can compare our credentials of visibility with each other, for a simple reason that the leadership we've had before, and even what we have right now, we believe in being visible by being invisible. We talk about, we want to be visible, but we want to stay away from the limelight. We have to step out there. We have to make, whether we are making good decisions or bad decisions, we are making the decisions anyway. They need to be out there, whether it's through mainstream media, topical issues. We have had these matters being discussed, coming up with subject matter expertise subcommittees, people who can help us digest matters, so that we can, the time when we are having problems with demolitions, I had a call up to have a public debate on it. And I had engineers who sat me down, they told me, this issue is very hot, Howard. You cannot have a public debate on these issues when it is hot, because when there are floods, you need to wait for the river to go down before you cross. And I told them, you see, the logic you've said, the floods analogy is very true, and it's wisdom. But that wisdom is not applicable to the situation of topical issues. The wisdom applicable, or the analogy applicable to topical issues, is the analogy of striking the iron while it's still hot. You don't wait for the topic to die before you give your opinion about it. The earlier you give your opinion, the better. It shows you have a stand, it shows that you stand for something. But one of the things, for example, that I really target, because you see, apart from just mainstream media, apart from having presence on social media, I would also want to have presence with government bodies, and professional institutions. And I want to explain a little bit, just throwing in an example. Have you ever asked yourself why a governors conference can happen in Kenya without an engineer securing even 20 minutes of talk time to speak to the decision makers? Remember, something like a governors conference brings together all the key decision makers, both in central government, in county government, all the legislators. We cannot afford to be too absent from such kind of stages. I had a chat with the chairman of the Council of Governors, not official chat, just because a side chat with the chairman Council of Governors, and I had also had a side chat with the secretariat of the Council of Governors, just trying to converse around this issue. And I'm telling them, guys, the budgets you are managing, your development budget, 80% of it goes to infrastructure related work, which is supposed to be managed by engineers. A huge portion of it goes to waste. You cannot afford to run the Council of Governors. You cannot afford to run the devolution conference without the input of an engineer. And the chairman was like, that sounds interesting. How come if all these years nobody has ever approached us about this? And this is the kind of a thing that we need to be doing. When advocates are meeting, when advocates are congregating, and they're talking about legal issues, there must be somebody who is able to articulate the position of engineers as far as legal services are concerned, or engineering services as far as law is concerned. Usually when we go to our conferences, I've had people complaining that lawyers came to speak to them. What stops engineers from speaking to lawyers? What stops engineers from making lawyers to know that, you see, we need engineers in area A, B, C, D. We must make our presence, and this should not be a question of, this should not look like we are begging anybody. We must make our presence known. We have people who are doing projects. They are not using the services of construction professionals and engineers. And the reason is simple, because engineers have gone into hiding. So a typical person out there believes that anybody on a construction project who is putting on PPEs is an engineer. So that you find Nyaparas are called engineers, foremen are called engineers, casual laborers are called engineers, except the engineer. He's not called an engineer. And children, villagers within the country believe that Kenyan engineers know absolutely nothing. What they don't know is that most of the things they see are designed and supervised by Kenyan engineers, executed by a Chinese contractor, but they believe the Chinese Nyapara who is putting on that hat is the engineer. This is misinformation. Personally, I've been running my campaign based on information based. If you follow through my campaigns, you will notice that I'm taking my sweet time to ensure that I develop content worth reading. In fact, I thought engineers don't like reading. I noticed that they've been reading everything and rereading. So I'll keep on doing that. But this content I'm developing, I'm just imagining we have to push it to a different stage where we are able to generate content, whether it is in print media, in electronic media, whether it is in social media, whether it is engaging with professional organizations, whether it is in conferences and public places. We must have these conversations going on. It cannot be done by one person. It has to be done by a team of engineers who have a convergence of thought and who believe that visibility is useful for engineers. Some of those people who look for fundis to do projects for them, 5-story building, it is because they can't differentiate between a fundi and an engineer. And it's our responsibility to bring this with clarity without leaving any doubt or without leaving any gray areas. The public needs to know with clarity who is an engineer and who is not an engineer.
All right, so in short, you're saying to improve visibility, you will try to work hand in hand with both national and the local governments.
Sure.
And how do you talk about information? Because information is lacking even in the universities. Students go through school, they don't even know what is IEK, they don't even know who is the regulator of engineering. So how will you tackle that?
We must connect with these people. Personally, I have a very special connection. There is a part of me that I didn't talk about. I don't know, maybe I could say I have an advantage of all-rounder all-roundedness. Because in my career, I've worked with humanitarian, I've worked in consultancy, I've worked for a contractor, I've worked for government, I've worked for training institutions. And my specialization, again, you'll notice, in geotechnical and materials engineering is cross-cutting. Contracts and dispute resolution is cross-cutting. So I've had an advantage to work in energy sector, in water sector, in road sector, in housing. These relations that we build, these relations that we engage along the way, whether it's like the relations I've built with universities, I should be able to leverage on them to ensure that our visibility does not just stop with the governors. Of course, when we go to the governors, that kind of visibility that should bring us the cake. We have also to go down to learning institutions. I find it to be so wrong that somebody can study for 5 years, come out of the university, and they still don't know the difference between IEK and DBK and the regulator and the members club, and they can't figure out what they're supposed to do with themselves. That is so wrong. We must begin engaging at a lower level at the universities. If possible, we might have, of course, with the team that will come on board when I'm now president, we must have a very structured way, properly programmed way of engaging with universities, a possibility of perhaps scheduling an engagement with engineering graduates just before they graduate, so that by the time they're stepping out, they have a clear picture of what is expected of them, the journey they're supposed to walk. But also, I had this engagement with one of the interview panelists. It's somebody that all of us know, engineer James Mwangi, who is a very, very respected engineer and a consultant. Both the structure for interviews, examining of engineers, and the structure for training, we do have a structure, but most of engineers don't seem to be knowing that we have a structure for training. When you leave school, you are supposed to cover which areas. You are supposed to cover this, cover that, cover that. For me, I think our biggest undoing is information is not communicated. Information is not passed even to members themselves. I had a challenge before we came into this election. We are having an election. It seems there are some rules somewhere, but nobody is magnanimous enough to just say, these are the rules. Even put it on a small flyer and just share it. I think one of the biggest problems as engineers is that we have been stifling, we have been stifling information flow. And this is one thing that we have to release. Let students know what is expected of them. Let fresh graduates know what is expected of them. Let us have structured communication. Let us have a structured training program that is clear and known to everybody. Let us have a structured, when I say let us, it looks like it's not there, but myself deeply, I know we do have a structure, but it's not communicated. We know that when you go to an interview, you should be examined. There is a report, the report should be written in this way, but you still meet many engineers who say they don't know. But they don't know because we have stifled information. We like hoarding information. Sometimes perhaps we use it for, for very personal gain, but this is a time when we have to realize that it's an information generation. The generation transition that we are doing, we must move to a place where members will be informed. Today, if anything is happening at the Chartered Institute, where I'm a member, even in London, I get that information, I get it in time. Sometimes when that function is coming, I've never seen this in IEK, I receive almost 2 other reminders that the function is coming in the next 3 days, so that there's no gray areas about it. It comes out with clarity. This is the kind of a thing that we need to do. Let us get hold of our engineering sons even before they leave campus. When they come out of campus, it will be a lot better if you have a clear and structured training program, akin to what used to be there a couple of years ago, when somebody would leave campus and they know exactly after this, I'll go here and then go here and then do this. The graduate internship program that government has rolled out, IEK has to step up and speak to government as early as, I realize that they've been also doing things because Howard has said he will do them. Now they need to do this. Speak to government and let government know that an engineering intern is not the same as any other intern, because the structured government internship gives 1 year for internship, and once it's over, you need to leave and somebody else comes. Now, engineering graduate internship cannot work like that. We need somebody to make it clear that the engineering internship program must work on a stretch of 3 years, because that's the minimum required for somebody to gain proper engineering experience to be able to register. Because you cannot design and supervise a project, especially in infrastructure, in less than 3 years, unless you are lucky to be in buildings where you can design and supervise it within 1 year and one and a half years. So this structured training, it's a time that we need to engage this early to ensure that we have an internship program that is tailored to engineers, separate from the internship program that is applicable to everybody else, procurement professionals, finance people, and
So, engineer, if I
Now,
get you, if I wait a
hello.
minute, Matthews, wait a bit. Let me clarify something with Howard. If I get you clearly, you are saying that this engineering internship should take three years, but you know very well that laws. There's the difference between the Act of Parliament and the rules of the institution, because the 3 years requirement is not in the Act. The 3 years requirement is in the rules and regulations. So how will you tackle that? Because it has to be based somewhere.
No, that issue is very simple to tackle, because someone explained this, and this is a doctrine of law. There is a hierarchy of laws. If there is anything in the rules that offends the act, that's a case closed issue. I mean, there is nothing to discuss. Once I become president, by law, I'll become a board member of IBK. And the job of the board members is to ensure that the mandate of the board are fulfilled and law is complied to. One of my pillars in my agendas is compliance. And if we have to, if we are going for compliance, and the law says that the law does not have any such requirement, whatever is spelled out in the rules should not offend what is spelled out in the act, and there should be no two ways about it. I mean, that is clear cut, and it should not be open to much debate until and unless the act is changed. Because at the end of the day, we need to have a level playing field, as I say. When we go the direction of compliance, that is one of the areas that we have to exercise rigidity. That's where rigidity is required, compliance. And when I say rigidity, I mean, if it says you jump 100 meters, please just jump 100 meters. If you can't jump 100 meters, do not shorten it to 50 meters. Go back and exercise and learn how to jump 100 meters. That's how simple it's supposed to be. So anything in the rules that offend the act should be a simple management decision to just put it aside and make progress.
Thank you, Engineer. Matthews?
Good evening, Howard.
Good evening, Matthews.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. I just wanted to know if you are the same that name on Telegram. Are you the same person?
Hello?
Hello?
Speaking?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Yes. I just wanted to ask a question. Huh?
Yes, please.
So, I have two questions. Maybe in a summary, just to make me understand better. There is a report which was prepared by the honorary secretary that some records were interfered with in the board. Are you aware of it, and what is your take on it?
Yes.
And did it affect you in any way? I think you just need to clarify that so that there is no any gray area about that.
Thanks, Matthew, for that question. First, okay, I like being positive and not reducing myself to smear campaign. It's unfortunate that from what I feel, there had been a deliberate decision to fashion a smear campaign against my candidature. I strongly believe in a system of meritocracy, and I have walked a very narrow path of my career progression. So I normally do not need to look behind my shoulder about my career progression. The issue that the honorary secretary raised was very, very unfortunate. What is unfortunate about it is not the fact that it happened. What is unfortunate about it is the fact that it is intended to drive a smear campaign. I am not privy to what happened. I have only heard from the Honorary Secretary, which I have no cause to doubt, that some certificates were procured fraudulently from IEK between the year 2016 and 2018 under the leadership of Engineer Okonji and a staff whom he has blamed officially, by his own handwriting. It is shocking news that a professional institution can experience such problems. But I think moving forward, if God gives us a chance to serve on that council, I believe the current council has worked on trying to straighten that system. We will try to improve that system and also make it more efficient so that certificates are first, very secure, but second, they come out in a timely manner. You don't have to wait for a certificate for 30 months. But number two, directly to your question, you asked whether it affected me. No, it did not affect me. And I'll explain. My corporate membership for IEK was issued that period of time. If what the Honorary Secretary says is true, that there is an investigation, I would be very glad to wait for the investigation. But I want to make this clarification that I got the path that I used to get registration. I did not go through IEK. I had never sat an interview at IEK. I went through EBK. I'm one of those people who are affected by the transition from the Engineers Registration Act and Engineers Act of 2011. When we applied at EBK, it took almost approximately 1.5 years for my application to be processed, because during that time, because of the transition, the board was supposed to be constituted, and then the board was supposed to begin meeting. So it took a bit long for our issues to be picked, to be considered by the board, for us to be called for the interviews. I went and sat the interview. The chairman of the interview was Professor Gishaga. We had Professor S.K. Mwea in the interview and the late Engineer Murunga in the interview. So I sat the interview, I did it, I passed it, I wrote the essay, I got my registration, I got my practice license. It took me about another 3 years before I submitted my documents from EBK to IEK for me to get the IEK corporate membership. So no, if there is any fraud that happened at IEK about certificates that were issued between 2016 and 2018, I don't think my certificate is part of the fraud. And I don't think it would be any necessary for it to be part of the fraud. I don't think I needed beg 127,000 to become a corporate member of IEK. I have walked a path of meritocracy and tested competency. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to ask the last, I want to, this is like an advice, or rather just to tell you my observation with the way you've been talking, and this is the first time I'm interacting with you, and to see how you are addressing one.
The question. Matthew, ask the question.
Yeah, I'm asking the question, but I also have to give the comment.
Yes, yes.
Because my comment is going to constitute the question.
All right.
Yes. One thing I appreciate, I've seen you really know what you want to do, and you have the clear vision of where you want to take this society to.
Yes.
Now, my small problem, what I don't know, is a question: is it possible you can adjust just within yourself? You are a bit too radical for a president, because president, we need somebody who can at least first observe things, you see both ways. Then when you make a ruling, when you make a judgment, you make a judgment based on the two sides you've seen and the two sides you've understood. Even the way you gave an example of flood, for example, flood and response, the way you give. Before you give address maybe to the public, because they have a lot of faith in you, you need first to get the material facts before you even address such issues. So I will just tell you, or as a word of advice, that you need to take time before you respond to anything. Kindly just take time, investigate, and then you respond with an answer or a comment that leaves no doubt in anybody's mind, because you are like crowning everything as the president. Otherwise, I think you've done well in explaining that issue. it has come out so well. I don't think I have any question pertaining the first question I asked. So I just wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And your advice is well noted, and I believe it's really well meaning, and it is only wise for me to take it just as it is. It is true that if you are president, you carry many people's aspirations, and sometimes it is not beneficial to break anybody's back because of rushing into something. As I said, I like to be open-minded, to listen, to get to know what is coming to people, what's coming from people, and so that when I move forward to make a statement, it is factual. However, there is also another side of me that I think helps me, because generally I'm a talkative person, I'm open. I was telling somebody earlier today that I think loudly. You do not need to struggle to know what Howard is thinking or what he feels about me. The other aspect of myself that I try to do is to ensure that if there is something that goes out of me that is misrepresented or not correct, I wouldn't shy away from retracting and setting the record straight, because sometimes, yes, things happen and something goes out that did not go as intended. You know, when you are speaking to the public, there is what you speak to them, which you have control over, but then you have no control over how they interpret it. So when you find that it has been interpreted differently, and I've had that a lot on Telegram. There is that message that I saw Ndolo had copied and reshared recently. When I said the medicine for communication is effective communication. Communicate. If the point has not gotten home, communicate it again. If there is any place that is still a gray area, communicate, so that at the end of the day, the message should reach the hearer the way it was packaged from the speaker. And that's what I believe. I believe that should really help to improve just the way how people relate. So I agree with you. Of course, care needs to be taken so that everything, if it's coming from the president, it should be coming with finality. But presidents have an advantage also. Once I sit on the president's seat, intel usually flows fast to the president. So I'll be able to get the information a little faster than I'm able to get the information when I'm still,
Thank you, engineer. Ogola, can you take over the question?
Can I ask just one? Can I just ask one last one?
Yes,
No, Matthews, thank you. Let's give other people a chance. I'll give you a chance later in the second session, okay? Bear patient with us. We'll give you another question chance. Ogola?
Yes, Engineer Howard.
Yes, Ogola.
This is Eugene Ogola speaking.
Yes.
Yes, I'm asking you this.
Yes.
When you become the president, actually I've been campaigning for you because I know your integrity. And when you become president, we have those engineers. We have those engineers who graduated from the so-called uncredited engineering, and now the court issued them with a mandate to get certificate from IBK.
Yes.
Now they have graduate engineering certificate, but when we have over 8 years experience, and you are told by the EBK that you have to have 3 years experience from the date of registration, how will you handle this, and how will you help these guys? And they are also aging.
That question I think Dolo had asked, but just go over it quickly. That question Dolo had asked in a form of asking the conflict between engineers' rules and the Engineers Act. And from the principle of hierarchy of laws, the Engineers Act supersedes, or the Engineers Act, the Engineers Rules is below the Engineers Act. So if the Act allows you to proceed and be registered, that is the direction that should be taken. And we shouldn't be beating around the bush. If the Engineers Rules came up with a rule that offends the Act, then the Act takes precedence. There has been this argument that, if we were not in our register, we could not know. But if you ask EBK today, when they register me as a graduate engineer today, do they come and monitor to know what I'm doing? They only get to know what I'm doing when I document it, present it to EBK. So they cannot claim that they only knew what you are doing when they registered you, because normally once they've given you the graduate registration, they never visit the site. They do not receive any logbooks from your training. They only wait for the day when you document your experience and show up for the interview. So to me, I think it's a false start for anybody to say that, we can only recognize your experience from the day when we registered you as a GE, because we do not know what you were doing before. If you worked on a project, it is not impossible for somebody to trace back, get you. This is the whole essence why we have mentors, why we have, what do you call them? These referees inside your CV. Because those referees are supposed to vouch for you, and they're supposed to, the board is supposed to take their word as a way of assuring the quality that, it's true, you worked on that project. So if that's a method that has been adopted by EBK, I don't see cause why that method should be dropped, or it should not be used to apply on the graduates, the engineers category, like what you've explained. People have actually been working for 8 years, and Supreme Court has now allowed them to be registered, and then you send them to ask them to wait for another 3 years. In any case, sometimes you'll find even the 3 years EBK is demanding, they wasted 1 year to try and do the graduate registration from the day you applied to the day when you got the certificate. So, because they did not have a board. So how do you expect to create a problem, waste a year, and expect that graduate to carry the burden of the year wasted by the board?
Yeah,
that's how I look at it.
That is very true for some of us, for example. Yes, continue.
A quick one again.
Yes.
We currently have young engineers who have come up to form the Kenya National Union of Engineers.
Yes.
When you join the office, when suppose you are elected to assume this presidency office, how will you configure about having the union or disbanding the union, which is currently people are trying to come up with, but there is still a small stalemate at the industrial court?
I don't see a reason for disbanding a union, and I've been very clear about this. In fact, the court case, I want to be straight, the court case that the union took to court, I made a personal financial contribution to the court case because I believe in the cause of justice. But I also advised the proponents of the union that having a union for engineers is not a walk in the park. Forget about the court case, but the execution of it, because we do not have a common bond as engineers. Forget about the unity of engineers. And now I'm talking about a common bond, which is a basic requirement to successfully run an organization like a SACCO or an organization like a trade union. If I want to run a SACCO, let's say I have an employer called Howard International who employs 500 people. It is easy to form Howard SACCO because those people work for one employer, therefore forming a common bond. In that bond, if I wanted to raise revenue for the SACCO, I only need to be in a mutual agreement with the Howard International Limited. When he's paying salaries to his employees, he should be able to deduct, make deductions, contributions for the SACCO. It becomes easy for the SACCO to generate its revenue so that it runs. Now, we lack something called a common bond for Kenya National Union of Engineers because all of us are scattered everywhere. The work of a trade union or the work of a labor relations institution is basically to push interests, labor-related interests, salaries, blah, blah, work conditions at the workplace, which to me, I don't think is a bad idea to have it to happen. I am only concerned about the operationalization. In fact, I think if anybody, if the Kenya National Union of Engineers is in court because somebody was trying to block it, then that person who is trying to block it is very evil. He should have just let them to register so that they can begin dealing with other most important problems. I don't think the biggest problem of Kenya National Union is a court case. Their biggest problem is how to operationalize the union. But if the union comes and the union helps to improve services or improve workplace conditions for engineers or improve remuneration, so be it. I don't think there should be a big problem about such kind of a vision or such kind of a way of thinking. Again, we must be very liberal and very accommodating. At the end of the day, we are the fraternity of engineers, and we have to watch out for each other's back.
Thank you so much. I wish I was just a P and I will go to immediately. Congratulations.
Sambaza material. Ambia wale watu wajafanya.
Ogola, from 2012 to date, my friend, you should have already collected the data. You have the
Hawa ndio
records.
wale wanaweka jam.
Yes.
Hawa ndio watu wa kwanza.
Wanaweka jam.
We need these people. We
My
need
second-
Howard.
We toa jam,
Yes.
toa jam.
Yesterday, Engineer Mongera committed in spoken that once I take office and he is the chairman, we will come for you. Wale watu wameweka jam. We will come for you very deliberately, very focused. It's not about, just trying out something, but personally, I have very interesting thoughts of how to open that Pandora's box and just nab all of you. If it means locking you up in one place, until we move the jam.
Fantastic.
And Ogola, you can apply in advance, and then the institution will tell you when to bring the data. You can do the application even as today.
I'm going to do application immediately Howard gets to office.
No,
I'm waiting for him.
It is
to
not a
be
matter.
in the office.
It's not. You can wait forever. Maybe you don't know what tomorrow brings, my friend. We are in this world as visitors.
Yeah.
So
Okay, thank you.
You just need to go ahead and
Okay.
put it in record that you have started the journey. Okay? And any other person who is listening,
Understood.
please go
Thank
ahead
you
and
so
do
much.
the application. Thank you for the question. Matthews, you had a question. Okay, Cedric,
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
just have a question.
Okay,
I just
Matthews.
have a comment, Mr. Howard. Just a quick one. Can you take this chance now to maybe just to apologize for some utterances you made when this group was formed, when some engineers were going through this difficult time and you made? Can you just take this chance that just like, I know you've said it, but now in black and white, just to clear
Matthews,
the air and those feeling
Matthews,
aggrieved with
can you give an
those
example?
things you
Can
said.
you give an example of the utterance?
He made so many. I don't want to go
Just
into this.
single
I
one
just want to
and
tell him.
use just single one and use some language that is understandable and not that will not be bad for the outside world. Just use out some decorum in your language.
No, he said them, and I think he knows it. So me, what I'm just asking him, there are so many souls injured by his word. He knows them, by the way. It's not that he doesn't know them. He knows them.
I understand because
so can you just take this opportunity,
Matthews,
and apologize on behalf on just apologize to those people.
What exactly do you want him to apologize for?
Can you let Howard answer?
Just a minute. I'm the moderator and I am asking a question because you cannot ask someone to apologize for even you don't have the exact mistake or the problem.
So can you let him answer?
Okay, Howard, do you know the question, the problem?
Okay, Matthew. Let me be a bit philosophical. As a person, I appreciate that there is a difference between saying I'm sorry and being remorseful. And there is a difference between saying thank you and being grateful. It wouldn't be my wish to hurt someone because at the end of the day, I believe that what builds us, as I said, it is our job to watch each other's back. I am trying to figure out what the statements are. Okay, Matthew had stated that I deleted them. I never delete my messages. My phone actually keeps SMSs, WhatsApps, and all Telegram messages. I never delete my messages. But I keep on imagining perhaps when we were having discussions about unregistrable graduates. And that is the time when I had a stand. And my stand was that universities must comply with the regulator. I kept on insisting that universities have got no excuse to insist, or we have no business suing EBK when the person who committed the mistake is the university. I said that because I believed in that position of the law. Unknowingly, and I restated unknowingly, perhaps the way it was received on the other side, it looked like I am deliberately against or offensive to the graduates. If I try to remember maybe another statement, which I said, the problem with the university is that some of them have got a physics lecturer teaching engineering or a home science teacher teaching public health engineering. I just want to imagine those are the kind of statements that could have offended Matthew. I think we need to close that chapter and understand that we have a future ahead of us to exercise the remorse, not just an act of saying, I'm sorry, but to remind each other that we mean well for each other. We mean well for each other, and we mean to build this dream together and drive the institution to where we would like it to be. As I said, again, when these issues are clear, when they are properly communicated, then we have less misunderstandings among us as members of one family. I hope this goes down well with Matthew.
All right. So, Engineer Howard, I have a question, or rather, even first, let me start with a comment. I definitely agree with you. Engineers need to get into those spaces, in those lawyers' conferences, speak about engineering in other spaces as.
Yes.
So my.
I think I've lost you.
Very good talk at the IEK. You can hear?
Diana, your network, is it okay?
I can hear you now.
Yes, it's okay.
All right, go ahead.
All right, let me now go ahead. My question is on persons with disability, or rather the differently abled.
Yes.
How are you as the president, how will you include them? Because when we go even to simple IEK conferences, let me not call them simple, but you get what I mean, even IEK dinners, international IEK conferences, you never see even a single person who is differently abled. Where are these people? Don't we have them? Even when I look at even in my campus, in the whole engineering school, there was none. Why aren't these rooms accessible to them? And also, I would like you to make a comment on women engineers. How you as the president, how will you ensure that we have more, or rather we encourage more girls into the profession and more to get registered? Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Quickly on persons with disability, we need to look at we need to look at it this way. There are those people who live with disability from the word go. When I was in high school, I was a roommate to a blind student who was living a normal life with the rest of us. When I was told that a blind person is coming to be my roommate, I was so scared. But believe you me, I stayed in a room with a blind person for 4 years, because we joined high school same time and we left same time. Currently, he went to do Bachelor of Education, and he's a teacher, Chrysanthus, who was called Chrysanthus Chris. There are those people who, from the word go, they come with the disabilities, and perhaps they get their way into engineering. Most of them venture into other areas where other professions like law, if somebody is blind, where maybe use of vision is not a critical requirement, because to having an engineer who is not able to see, it can be a lot more challenging in engineering. But there are people who also develop disabilities when they are already engineers, either say like from work injuries. Sometimes an engineer was driving and he got an accident and what have you. The point that you have said, the problem or the challenge we have in IEK today is data, because we do not have data about these people. We don't know who they are. We just know his member number, M this, or member number, G this. That's all. So until we come to a point of keeping this, developing this data, maintaining it, we are not able to do what we call abstraction. Those guys who have done ICT, when you do abstracting, you can't do abstracting if you do not have the data. If you do not know how many engineers with disability do we have, how did the disability happen, and what can we do for them. We must get data. We must get data on who is an registrable engineer, who is registrable engineer, who has studied abroad, who is selling insurance covers, who is in the banking industry, who is doing high profile engineering work in Safaricom, ensuring that our webinar is stable for 1.5 hours, but that guy is not recognized. Nobody knows where he exists. We should be able to identify these people, where they are, what they're doing, for us to be able to plan for them and plan solutions. So the same thing for women was the issue of women and disability, cross-cutting issues which need mainstreaming. Of course, today there is a lot of improvement when it comes to the girl child as far as engineering is concerned. There has been mentorship programs. In my agenda as president, I decided to make it broad. I was prepared for this presidency. What I wanted to ensure is that when the council comes into place, whoever comes, because I've seen people who have agendas on women. Yesterday at Radisson Blue, I spoke to
Engineer. Engineer, let me allow you to take a breather and take some water. Then you will start with that question.
Okay.
We'll start with that question. Sorry about that. Everybody, let's give engineer 2 minutes to take a breather and take some water.
Thank you.
You join immediately after 2 minutes, guys.
Now,